When Faith Hedgepeth is found brutally beaten to death, an entire community is plunged into fear and suspicion. Her murder launches one of the largest homicide investigations in North Carolina history. But the case seems to unearth more questions than answers. Are there hidden clues in her roommate's 911 call?
She's unconscious.
Does a mysterious pocket dial hold any secrets? What does the cryptic note left at the scene reveal? Will there ever be justice for Faith Hedgepeth? Chapel Hill, North Carolina, September 6th, 2012. Faith Hedgepeth and her roommate, Karina Rosario, spend the evening at a sorority event and then head to the library to study. A few hours later, the two young women head out to a local nightclub, The Thrill. Early morning, September 7th, 2012. According to Karina, the young women spend a few hours at The Thrill and then return to the one-bedroom apartment they share. Karina falls ill. Both women text and call a few of their male friends. At 4:25 a.m., Karina is picked up by a friend. She leaves Faith alone at the apartment with the door unlocked. Hours later, Karina returns to the apartment, accompanied by her friend, Marisol Rangel. She finds Faith in the bedroom, brutally beaten to death.
There's blood all over the pillows. I don't know what happened.
Is she breathing?
I don't think so.
John Taylor, a true crime author and podcast host who has studied the murder of Faith Hedgepeth for years, describes the crime scene.
Faith was found half on the bed, half off the bed. Faith was not clothed from the waist down. Her shirt had been pulled up over her face. Either she had sex with someone or she was sexually assaulted. And the autopsy does not specifically state that she was sexually assaulted.
The police identify a rum bottle as the murder weapon.
She had been severely beaten.
Amongst the crime scene evidence is a strange note scrawled on a fast food to-go bag.
I'm not stupid, bitch jealous. It's not clear who that could have been written to.
Even more perplexing is the fact that despite the room being soaked in blood, the bag is pristine.
Which means either that it was done prior to the murder or the perpetrator cleaned himself up. When you first read the letter, it appears to be written to Faith, but it makes no sense to write a note to a person who you've already murdered. And so then the most likely person to find Faith would be her roommate, Karina. It could be written to Karina. Then it would have to be, is it some kind of warning?
The conspicuous cleanliness of the bag suggests it's part of an attempt to stage the crime scene.
If you have crime scene staging, that means you're looking at somebody that's pretty close to the victim.
At the time of the murder, the closest person to Faith is Karina. Karina discovers the body and makes the 911 call.
911, where is your emergency?
I just walked into my apartment and my friend she's unconscious. There's blood everywhere.
A close analysis of the 911 call leads Taylor to speculate that Karina may be hiding something.
There's something not right with this 911 call.
I just walked into my apartment.
The first thing she says, it says, I just walked into the apartment. That Marisol was with her. Why did she choose to say I when she should have said we? There was almost an effort to not let the 911 call operator know that Marisol was there.
Marisol herself is an enigma.
The only thing I know about Marisol is that the downstairs neighbor had mentioned Karina and Marisol were very joyful and laughing and giggling, and she was shocked to find out later that someone had been killed. And I don't place a lot of emphasis on their behavior. People have been known to laugh and giggle in very stressful and serious situations, but it's one of those things that if you witness that, it certainly didn't seem appropriate.
Other elements of the call seem off to Taylor.
She never used Faith's name, and she provided quite a bit of unsolicited information.
There's stuff in my room that was not here before.
In Karina's mind, it's important to let the operator know that things have been brought into that room.
It looks like someone had came in here. It really does. It looks like someone had been in there. Someone had to have been in there.
She felt it was very important that the operator and the police know that someone had come in between the time she left and when she'd come back. That is very telling that that's what she was focused on.
Taylor wonders why Karina isn't focused on more pressing matters.
She never specifically asked for help. And along those lines, if she had no knowledge of what happened to Faith, then there's no reason for her to believe that the perpetrator is either not there or could come back. The culmination of all those items certainly make the call quite unusual.
Taylor isn't the only one who's perplexed. Karina's 911 call has set internet speculation ablaze.
Because she hasn't been out doing interviews, a lot of people think that she could know more than she's been willing to tell the police.
I don't know what happened. I just don't know what happened. I don't know what's going on. Like, I just can't believe this.
The 911 call is not the only piece of phone evidence that confounds investigators.
Faith's phone had dialed one of her friends, and the timestamp was 1:23 a.m. Faith was still at the Thrill, and from that, the police tried to decipher if they could learn anything.
Police have the pocket dial voicemail enhanced by an audio specialist.
He felt that he was able to get a pretty good transcript of what was going on during the phone call.
Some speculate the phone has recorded a heated or even violent argument. But strangely, the security footage that captures Karina and Faith leaving the club does not suggest they're under duress.
I mean, they look happy or excited, but there's nothing to indicate anything other than two girls who are having a good time at a club that are leaving.
So what does the pocket dial tell us?
I think it's a data point. The only way that you really could make a lot of sense of this is if you got one or two individuals who were present. It would be a great tool for jogging some memories, who was mad at who, and those kinds of things.
Despite the efforts of police, the evidence has still not yielded any results.
There's no one that has been identified as a possible perpetrator. I think a pretty good theory is that it's someone who is maybe 1 degree of separation from Faith, maybe someone who was a friend of someone that Faith dated.
Taylor speculates that Faith was killed by someone she rebuffed romantically.
The wrong person with a big enough ego and enough narcissism, if they're rejected, they may respond with violence. Hundreds of individuals have been given DNA tests in this case, and no one has come back to the DNA of the perpetrator. DNA analysis is done by humans. There could be human error. I would certainly go back and have a blind second test of the DNA on some of the more likely people that could have been involved. There's always the option that this could have been random, though I find that highly unlikely.
With no solid leads, many wonder if Faith's case will ever be solved. Could a similar case from 50 years ago support the theory that Faith's murder was random? Although it happens in 1969, the murder of college student Jane Britton bears many eerie similarities to Faith Hedgepeth's case.
Jane Britton was a 23-year-old Harvard graduate student. She was found raped and beaten to death in her Cambridge apartment in January of 1969.
Jane's boyfriend finds her after she fails to show up for an important final exam.
That was out of character. She was a really good student. When he got there, the door was unlocked. So he went in and he found his girlfriend face down on the bed.
Jane Britton's body is positioned very similarly to Faith Hedgepeth's.
She'd died from blunt force trauma to her head, and she had her nightgown pulled up over her head.
However, this staging is not uncommon in murder cases involving sexual assault.
It's a sign that the person, I hate to say this about a rapist, but feels remorseful, or person has gotten a opinion of modesty after. Like, oh, I don't want people to see her like this, so I'm going to cover her up, even though you just raped and murdered her. As
with Hedgepeth, there are several odd pieces of evidence that suggest the perpetrator stages the scene.
There was also this red ochre powder that was sprinkled over her body.
Red ochre is a natural pigment. Some cultures traditionally used it in funeral rites, including the Persians, who who occupied present-day Iran.
And that kind of stuck out to police because Jane had gone on an archaeology dig in Iran. Police did find the murder weapon, which was a stone that she'd brought back from her archaeology dig. Because of the connections between the powder and the artifacts that she'd been killed with, they believed it was somebody who may be in the archaeology department at Harvard. There was all these people coming forward saying there's arguments on their archaeology dig, and they focused on this, it was somebody she knew or somebody from her area angle.
In the case of Jane Britton, it is assumed for a long time that it has to be someone she knew. Decades pass. The case goes cold. Until 2006, when a group of Redditors become interested in the case and begin digging deeper. Their efforts inspire true crime bloggers and journalists who put pressure on the police to reopen the case. Finally, a breakthrough is made.
So in 2017, outside interest in the case kind of forced police to take another look at Jane Britton's murder and use modern technology. And they did get a match, but it was a match to somebody who had been dead for several years, Michael Sumter. And he had actually done time for rape before he died.
Not much is known about Michael Sumter, other than that he lived about 1 mile from Britton's apartment and was later convicted for 2 other rapes.
So they matched it to him, but now they had to kind of verify it. And obviously he's not alive anymore, so they can't actually take his DNA. His brother, who's still alive, willingly gave a sample of his DNA so that they could match it, knowing that if they matched it to his brother, they'd be matching it to Michael. And allegedly the police did have a way of eliminating Michael's brother as a suspect.
5 decades after her death, Jane Britton's case is considered closed. What can the similarities between the murders of Jane Britton and Faith Hedgepeth tell us?
They were both found on the bed, they were both found face down, they were both found with their heads covered. And then you kind of have the fact that the scenes seemed staged. With Jane, you have the red ochre powder and her being covered up. And with Faith, you have that strange note that was found by her body, which I believe was placed there after she died. So in a lot of ways, it would seem as if somebody who knew these 2 girls had been the one to kill them. However, in Jane's case, this was a random attacker, a random act of violence. And it could be the same thing for Faith.
Perhaps the resolution of a case as old and strange as Jane Britton's can offer hope that Faith Hedgepeth's case will one day be solved. Police continue to work the case to this day, searching tirelessly for her killer. If you have any information regarding the murder of Faith Hedgepeth, please contact Chapel Hill Carborough UNC Crime Stoppers at 919-942-7515.